Hey, hey, hey. Today we are going to be reading a book all about space and the person who named the used-to-be planet, Pluto. I'm still very salty that it's not a planet anymore, and I always will be. We are going to be reading The Girl Who Named Pluto, the story of Venetia Burney. So this was a girl who was not, she was an elementary school student, and I believe, now I need to look. I don't know if it actually said in the beginning what grade she was in. It did not. And I don't know, look in the back. There's an author's note in the back that oftentimes tells us a lot more information about people that didn't make it into the book. And it does not say how old she was. I'm pretty sure that she was in elementary school, maybe middle. So, this is a story about how a student not much older or younger, depending on how old you are, than you, named a planet at the time that she named it. It was a planet. It's no longer a planet anymore. But she named the planet Pluto. And as we read this book, we will learn about different things that influenced her on how she came up with that name. So stay tuned and we're going to find out about how she named Pluto. The Girl Who Named Pluto, the story of Venetia Burney. Written by Alice B. McGinty, illustrated by Elizabeth Hadel. So this book is pretty big, and I'm going to do the best to show you everything. Also, my iPad screen is a little bit smaller than the video ends up being, so my apologies for how large this book is, but isn't it amazing? Here are all these different constellations. These are different constellations you can see if you look at the night sky. You don't see these little dashes, though. They just, those help show us how the stars connect when we are looking at constellations. The Girl Who Named Pluto. Out the classroom, down the hallway, and out the door. Venetia Burney and her classmates follow their teacher, leaving their British schoolhouse behind. It is the year 1930, and they are counting their steps from the sun, a circle drawn on the classroom blackboard. So the teacher drew the sun on the blackboard in their classroom, and then they are walking the distance from the sun to the earth, not in real space, but if the sun were the size that the teacher drew it on the whiteboard, then they're walking the same respective space to where the earth would be. So say I drew the sun only this big. You would then be calculating the same distance that the sun is from our teeny little speck of a planet. You wouldn't even really be able to see it. You can barely even see that dot, and that's probably much, 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 much larger than the Earth would really be if the sun was only that big. So that's what they're doing right now. The teacher drew the sun on the blackboard, and then they are all walking the distance that if the sun were only as big as the teacher made it on the blackboard, then how far away from their school would they have to walk to show the distance between the sun and the earth? It is the year 1930, and they're counting their steps from the sun, a circle drawn on their classroom blackboard. 39, 40, 41, Miss Claxton leads, her words as precise as her footsteps. At exactly 41 paces from the sun, they lay down a bird seed. Mercury. So here she is saying 41. So exactly 41 paces, and that's what we say when you are walking and you put one foot in front of the other, that's a pace. So it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. So at 40 steps from the sun, so from the blackboard, they lay down a piece of birdseed that represents the first planet, Mercury. So here they are. Here's the little piece of birdseed. Mercury. And all the kids watching. This is also a thing I really like that illustrators do sometimes. All of these colors are pretty much the same. They're all really neutral. They're greens and grays and browns. But our main character has a brighter color so that it's really easy for us to spot her every time. At 77 paces, they place a P, Venus. Next, a larger P, Earth. After placing a bead for Mars and an orange for Jupiter, because Jupiter is huge compared to the other planets in our solar system. It's a gas giant. So that's why Mercury is only a grain of birdseed. And then a pea is Venus, and Earth is also the size of a pea in this case. So an orange compared to a little pea, Jupiter is a much larger planet than most of the other planets in our, all the other planets in our solar system. So here we go. This is where the school was. So the sun is inside the school. Then they're walking down the street. They make that piece of birdseed for Mercury. They have a P for Venus. They have another P for Earth. They didn't tell us what Mars was. But Jupiter, so down another block, Jupiter is an orange. And then we can see Saturn all the way over here. After placing a bead for Mars, oh, my bad, it was a bead. After placing a bead for Mars and an orange for Jupiter, the largest planet, they stop at 1,019 paces inside University Park. There, they lay down a golf ball, and the golf ball is Saturn. So the golf ball stands for Saturn. There are 2 more planets in the solar system, Uranus and Neptune. But Miss Claxton tells the students that they are too far away. She'll let their imaginations finish the planet walk. So they went all the way into the park. So that's 3, 4 blocks away from school already. And to go the next distance of the next planet, the teacher's like, it is too far for us to walk. You're going to have to, in your imagination, imagine where the next planets are. So they only actually walked to where Saturn was. There are 2 more planets in the solar system, Uranus and Neptune. But Miss Claxton tells her students that they're too far away. She'll let their imagination finish the planet walk. And here we have our main character, and she is imagining in her mind that Saturn is 1,019 paces from the sun, and then that Uranus and Neptune are further out there, somewhere further out there. When Veneta and her friends return to the park later with lumps of clay for the planets, they run, counting paces to Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all the way to Neptune. So you have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Veneta's imagination whirls, trying to fathom the real distances, and that means trying to wrap her mind around how far these things really are out in space, because really they're not this close together. They are so far apart, it's hard to even imagine. And that's what Veneta is thinking about right now. She has memorized each number. Stormy blue Neptune orbits 2.79 billion miles from the sun. And what lies beyond? How far does the solar system reach? Veneta brings her questions to breakfast each morning, and Grandfather Madan answers as many as he can. She and Mother have been living with Grandfather since Veneta's father died. Old and stately, like the Oxford Library where he was head librarian, Grandfather knows that questions lead to learning, and his family was afire with learning. Along with the planets, Veneta is learning about Greek and Roman gods. When she reads about Mars, the Roman god of war, she's reminded of her great-uncle Henry Medan, a science master who named the 2 moons orbiting that planet. He chose, I don't know these names, but I'm going to do the best I can. Phobos and Deimos, Mars's twin sons, moons and planets named from legends. What a marvelous link between science and story. So here are the questions that she's asking her grandfather. And she has a question and then grandfather has an answer. So I'm going to read them back and forth like it was the conversation they were having. How many moons does Saturn have? 9 moons have been discovered so far. Where did the name Neptune come from? From the Roman god of the sea. Why is Atlas stuck holding up the heavens? Because Zeus punished Atlas. Who was the first person to discover Mars? Nobody knows, but Galileo saw it first by telescope. At breakfast on Fridays, as Grandfather sifts through the newspaper, he starts to read aloud. A new planet, discovery by Lowell Observatory. Professor Harlow Shapley announced today that the Lowell Observatory at Flagstaff, Arizona, has discovered a 9th major planet. The planet, which has not yet been named, is beyond Neptune, so it's further out than Neptune. A new planet? Veneta leans forward in her chair. Another lump of clay to add to their model. I wonder what it should be called, Grandfather says, his brow creased. Veneta's imagination takes off, flying, leaping, connecting the dots from science to story. She knows that this planet, so far from the sun, must be frozen, dark, and lifeless. Because if the sun heats our planet and allows things to grow, allows it to be warm enough for us to live, basically, right? We can live on almost any part of our planet and we'll be okay. We might need to wear a little bit less clothes for the warmer places or more clothes for the colder places, but that's on Earth. And remember that here is Earth. We're talking about a planet that is so far out, it's further than Neptune. This was the only planet, this was the furthest planet they knew about at this point in time. So it's even further out than Neptune. So if Earth is just right, even Mars is much, much colder than Earth is. And Mercury and Venus, they're much warmer than Earth is because of how close they are to the sun. So because that planet is all the way out, Veneta's thinking about how it must be a really dark and cold place because the sun won't be able to travel out that far. She knows that this planet, so far from the sun, must be frozen, dark, and lifeless. It would be like the Underworld. The Underworld ruled in Roman myths by Neptune's brother, Pluto. It might be called Pluto, Veneta says. So there is our new planet. And again, if we zoom out, so this is how big the sun is. If all of the planets were this size, then this is how big the sun would actually be. The sun is huge. It's huge, 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 huge. And then this we can see really nicely. This is why Jupiter was an orange, because it is so much bigger than the first planets in our solar system. So here we have the sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, then there's quite a bit of distance, and then we have Jupiter. Then there's a lot more distance, and we have Saturn. Then even further out, we have Uranus. Then we go even further out, we have Neptune. And now we have our new mystery planet, which we know as Pluto. And now, technically, it's no longer a planet. It's not classified as a planet anymore. But at this point in time, it was. Pluto's only not been a planet, I want to say maybe like 6 to 8 years. It's pretty new that they've reclassified it. Grandfather's eyes widen. He loves the name. He tells Veneta that he'll share her idea with his friend, Professor Herbert Hall Turner of the Royal Astronomical Society. Perhaps he has a say in the decision. After Veneta leaves for school, Grandfather writes this note. Dear Professor, that looks like it says blessed. I don't know that word. I'm going to look it up right now. B-L-E-S-T. Blessed. So it means blessed, like something is blessed, or like my cat is blessed with cuteness. It's just an old spelling. And throughout time, it's crazy. Our language changes a lot throughout time. So this is like a really old English spelling of the word blessed. So it means the same thing. Blessed if my little granddaughter, Venetia Burney, didn't up and suggest a name which to me seems thoroughly suitable. So basically he's saying like, hey, my granddaughter came up with this name and I think that it's actually a perfect name because Veneta was thinking about a lot of the other planets and stars are named after mythology. And so she was thinking about mythology and she thought about the ruler of the Underworld. And the Underworld is a pretty cold and dark place in their mythology. So she thought about the ruler of that cold and dark place, which is what makes it so perfect as a planet name, because so many of the other planets are already, and stars are already named after different early mythologies. Sincerely, Madame. On his way to the library, Grandfather drops the note at the professor's home. Meanwhile, not far away, Veneta and her schoolmates are buzzing with excitement about the new planet. They fire question after question at Miss Claxton. How is it discovered? By whom? How many billion miles from the sun? How many paces beyond Neptune? Miss Claxton promises to find out. And here we have Veneta silently thinking about that planet. That evening, Veneta lies in her bed, her mind adrift with Planet X. In the flurry of her thoughts spins one name, Pluto. Could it be the name for the new planet? Were the astronomers deciding now? Saturday morning dawns, and Veneta and Grandfather search the papers for more information about Planet X. And that's what they were calling it before it was named. Mostly, though, they wait to hear from the professor. That afternoon, a response arrives. My dear Madame, I got your note on my return from London. I think Pluto. Interesting. This says, I think Pluto excellent. And I would think this would say, I think Pluto is excellent. But what do I know? This could be another version of how in older times things were written differently. I think Pluto excellent. We did not manage to think of anything so good at the Royal Astronomical Society yesterday. So all of the people who actually it's their job to talk about space all day, they did not come up with something as good as they thought that Veneta's idea of naming it Pluto was. The professor's note goes on to say that he has written to the astronomers at Lowell about Pluto. It will be up to them to decide. A week goes by. So here we see that she is thinking about math. Here we have some information about an emu, which lives in Australia, how big its egg is. At school, Veneta works on lessons in math, science, and history. Once upon a faraway land, once upon a time, I was reading this part first. Sometimes books do that, where I was reading and I went, wait a second, that doesn't make very much sense. Once upon a faraway land, girl in the. I was like, what? And so then I looked across and saw that's how I'm supposed to read it. Once upon a time, there was a faraway land where the only little girl in the castle was at home, she and grandfather kept busy reading, playing, and waiting. Will the astronomers like her idea? March turns to April, and Veneta waits. April drags on. Outside, the trees sprout leaves, and Veneta waits. So here we see this plant has no leaves on it. There's no leaves on the tree. Here we're starting to see some color, saying that maybe it's spring outside. This has some nice leaves on it now. The seasons are changing as she's waiting. If Veneta could see what was happening across the ocean, she would find that Pluto has made its way through the doors of the Lowell Observatory to Clyde Tombaugh, the shy assistant who discovered Planet X. So here he is right here. And Lowell Observatory is in Arizona in the United States. So this is the United States. And over here is where Veneta is. His first choice for their name, Pluto. Not only is it a perfect fit for this dark, icy world, but the first two letters are PL, the initials of astronomer Percival Lowell, who began the search for the planet. So remember, they're at the Lowell Observatory. That's who it's named after. I mean, Percival Lowell, of course, not Pluto. Finally, at the end of the month, the astronomers vote. It's unanimous, and unanimous means everybody votes for the same thing. It's unanimous. The 9th planet will be named Pluto. So here we see all these dudes, and at this time, unfortunately, women were not really in these positions. So that's why we're seeing all of these men. Women weren't yet in these types of most women. There were some, and they had to fight through some extremely hard situations because almost all of the people in sciences were men, and they did not take women very seriously at that time. So that's why we're seeing all of these men. Yes, agreed, aye, and that means yes. And these two are saying aye as well. When grandfather shares the news with Veneta, she beams, her eyes radiant. So she's like, oh my gosh, they picked my name. I'm so excited. Grandfather sends a check to Miss Claxton, thanking her for her teaching. With the money, the school purchases a gramophone. So here it is getting delivered. They're opening it up. And its name is Pluto. Veneta is a hero. So a gramophone is something that used to play music. So, right, we have stereos, we have AirPods, like even this is a mini speaker that's Bluetooth. We've come a long way, people, because this is what you would need to play your music on. You would put a record on there, and the record would go around. I'm pretty sure you put records on there. And then the music comes out of this kind of horn-like thing. So the shape of this it's not an instrument. It's It plays music. The shape of it helps make it louder as it comes out. So this was like, imagine that Veneta got them a super old school boombox. That's basically what that is. As Veneta grows, Pluto tilts and spins in its long, slow orbit around the sun. It shares the outer reaches of the solar system with other spheres newly discovered by astronomers. Veneta gets older and older still. Her hair turns silver. And one gray July afternoon, the day before her 89th birthday, she travels to the Observatory Science Center near the southern tip of England. She has been invited to view Pluto through a telescope, her first time ever. It's raining, though, and it takes a clear sky to see the dwarf planet. But as Veneta nears, the rain stops and the clouds begin to part. A lovely sunset fills the sky. Later, the darkness twinkling with stars, Veneta and the scientists climb to the observatory's dome, where the 111-year-old telescope is waiting. The scientists locate Pluto, and Veneta puts her eye to the lens. So I know that the University of Washington has an observatory. There are different places that you can go to, and sometimes you can find ones that allow the public to go so you don't have to work there to go. And you can go at nighttime and view through the telescope, but usually it's for like special occasions or special events. So you can go and you can look through the telescope and like think about how big this telescope is. Like that's the size of a grown adult. This is a huge telescope, but it has to be really powerful to be able to look out into space, which is why they're so big and complex. The scientists locate Pluto, and Veneta puts her eye to the lens. "By God," she says in an odd voice, "there it is, that icy sphere spinning 3.65 billion miles from the sun, many paces past Neptune, and its name is Pluto." Author's note: Veneta Catherine Burney was born in Oxford, England on July 11th, 1918. This book closely follows her true life story, including her planet walk at school, her great interests in studying the solar system in Greek and Roman mythology, and her visit to the Observatory Science Center when she was older. Veneta did indeed suggest the name Pluto after her grandfather shared the article about the planet's discovery. And the letters from Professor Turner and the astronomer's decision process about the name are historically accurate. When I put these events into the story, I imagined how Veneta waited and how she reacted when she found out her name Pluto had been chosen. What happened to Veneta in the years after she named Pluto? She grew up to become an accountant, working with numbers, and later a math and economics teacher, pursuing her love of learning. She married Maxwell Fair, who studied the culture and languages of ancient Greece and Rome. Imagine the conversations they had. Veneta Burney Fair lived until the age of 90. She died in Surrey, England on April 30th, 2009. And what about Pluto? As telescopes became stronger, scientists found other icy, rocky objects in the outer reaches of the solar system where Pluto orbits. They named the region the Kuiper Belt. In 2005, an object that appeared to be larger than Pluto was discovered. I remember that. The discovery of Eris, as it was named, led scientists to rethink the definition of a planet. In 2006, based on that new definition, scientists made the difficult decision. It was so sad. Scientists made the difficult decision to reclassify Pluto as a dwarf planet. In an interview with NASA, when Veneta was asked whether she was upset by the decision, she responded, "I suppose I would prefer to remain a planet." So she wished that it got to stay a planet. Grandfather Madan understood the importance of Veneta's contribution to science. Along with his check to the school and his letter of thanks to Miss Claxton, he gave Veneta a £5 note worth more than $300 in today's currency, and 2 scrapbooks of articles about Veneta and Pluto that he had clipped from newspapers. Veneta is the only child to have named a planet, and science has honored her for it. In 2006, when NASA launched New Horizons, a robotic spacecraft that would fly to Pluto and beyond, on board was an instrument named the Venetia Burney Student Dust Counter. It was the first instrument on a NASA mission designed, built, and operated by students. When New Horizons reached Pluto in July 2015, it photographed a large crater area there, which was named Burney Basin. Super cool. And then here it shows different places that the author went to find information about Veneta. And this tells us about all of the different things that she used. And this is something that you'll do as you get older and you write research papers. You'll put in the back all of the different places where you got information. And that way, if people want to learn more, they can go to these places. And it also tells people, hey, not all of these ideas were mine. Some of them came from these places. All right, well, I hope that you liked this book. Learning about a student naming a planet. So cool. Well, I guess it's not a planet anymore. But when she named it, it was a planet. All right. This was The Girl Who Named Pluto, the story of Venetia Burney. I will catch you back here next time.